Are religious people idiots? Well, this theist seems to think so, at least that seems to be the argument he's making. Let's look at reasons why we ought to believe in God, and misconceptions about why we should not, and find out maybe if theists are really that dumb. This is a brand new tiny channel, and right now it has no subscribers as I write this, called God Questions. But I will give him credit in that he's both going to present reasons not to believe in his imaginary friend, as well as supposed reasons that we should. Will he be any more impressive than any of the other videos we've looked at? Yeah, don't hold your breath. But this is exactly why we do it. Because the reasoning given by the religious is so uniformly terrible, irrational, and unintelligent, you'd think they'd eventually get the hint, but that never seems to happen. But let's go take a look, shall we?
Welcome back to God Questions, where we address and re-examine some of the difficult questions about God. For this video, we're going to address the question of whether or not God exists, and see if we can't unravel the mystery.
Sounds good. And I like this video because it both gives arguments for and against God's existence, something that you very rarely ever see from the religious side. Now, that doesn't mean that they're good arguments on either side, but I'll take a look at those as they come up.
There's two sides to whether or not God exists. Obviously, there's a side that says, yes, he does exist, and there's the side that says, no, he doesn't, you're an idiot.
And there's the side that says you've got no good reason to think that he does, therefore you'd have to be an idiot to believe that he does without that evidence. And that's the side I happen to fall on, completely unemotional and rational, and I think it's the only defensible position that anyone can take.
Let's just go ahead and address the no he doesn't, you're an idiot side real quick. The no he doesn't, you're an idiot side says, well, I can't see him like I can see a tree or a dog or a person, so therefore he does not exist. That's number one.
Which isn't a good argument. There are lots of things that we can't see, but for which there are all kinds of evidence. Because being able to see something is not the only reason we can detect a thing. But in the case of God, he's entirely undetectable in any rational way, and there's really no effective difference between something that cannot be detected and something that does not exist at all. The time to believe is when you can show that it's real, not a moment before.
Number two, he doesn't exist because he's a man-made idea. How many religions are out there that basically they all state that their God is the only God out there?
That much is true. We don't see any religions that don't look absolutely identical to something that would be man-made. They all follow the same patterns, they all tell the same stories, and none of them have any corroboratory evidence to back up their claims. And of course, they all use emotional appeals, never intellectual ones, to convince their adherents that they are correct. You'd think that if there were any God out there, he, she, or it might care if we believed, and therefore would give us clear and unambiguous evidence. And all religions have ad hoc rationalizations for why that never happens. Go figure.
And number three, simply, science has proven that he doesn't exist. Well, there are quite a few very well-established scientists that have argued that he does exist, and he is that God does exist, and God is the basis for all life.
Not so much. Now, in the list he gave, Einstein didn't believe in a personal God, but instead was pantheistic, considering the universe itself to be a god of sorts. He wrote a letter to author Eric Gutkind saying, "The word God is for me nothing more than the expression and product of human weakness. The Bible is a collection of honorable but still primitive legends. For me, the Jewish religion, like all other religions, is an incarnation of the most childish superstitions. Galileo and Newton both lived in a time when we had no good scientific explanations for things like the origin of life, and stating that you weren't religious or disagreed with church dogma would get you imprisoned, as Galileo was, or outright killed, like Giordano Bruno was. So they're poor examples because there were external factors limiting what they could say and what knowledge they had. And Darwin, while he was still living in a time where not professing religion could have profound social and professional consequences, he certainly wasn't a Christian. He wrote in a letter to F.A. McDermott that, "I am sorry to have to inform you that I do not believe in the Bible as a divine revelation, and therefore not in Jesus Christ as the Son of God." What he really believed, I don't know. But certainly, he wasn't your typical Bible thumper.
I think there's only one major contributor in recent times that said he doesn't exist, whose argument basically imploded on itself. It didn't make any sense.
He was hardly the only scientist, especially when you consider that the American Academy of Sciences, one of the most prestigious scientific organizations around, is 93% atheist. When it comes to the hard sciences, scientists overwhelmingly reject religion and a belief in gods. When 75% plus of the regular population professes beliefs, the people who study the world in the greatest detail, those people don't buy into it.
Now that we've established the arguments for why he does not exist, let's go ahead and establish the arguments for why he does exist. The first one is very simple. The simple fact that we have the idea to argue that God exists is evidence in and of itself. Well, someone gave you that concept.
It's nothing of the sort, any more than because we have the idea of unicorns, that unicorns exist, or leprechauns, or anything else that we can dream up. This is one of the stupidest arguments for the existence of God that you can have.
Argument number 2 for the idea of creation, that nature itself is so complex that there's no way it's random. Nature itself demonstrates that there is a will, a creator, a desire behind existence.
Completely undemonstrated. You could say that proves the existence of magical universe-creating pixies. It doesn't actually tell you anything. It's just a bald assertion meant to comfort the emotions, not inform the mind. It is, like most religious claims, just a rationalization. I don't get it, therefore God. But this is absurdly fallacious on its face. This is a common argument, and one that is ridiculously easy to dismantle.
And then argument number 3. Prophecies. Man tries to predict the future all the time and fails rather epically.
Just look at all of the so-called Bible prophecies, all of which have been either extremely vague or which have just failed outright. And Christians always have an explanation for why their ridiculous big book of multiple choice performs so badly. They are emotionally wedded to an idea, they're not intellectually convinced of a proposition. They can't actually back any of this up.
Scripture and also in history, they oftentimes say the same thing about what happened chronologically.
More often not. All it takes is a committed fan base who can cherry-pick events to try to fit it in with vague prophecies because they really want it to be true. Just look at Nostradamus, whose followers want to pretend that most of the things he wrote in his quatrains have come to pass. But of course, as with biblical prophecy, you can only see the fulfillment in the past, never in the future. You never know what's coming up, only what's already happened. And that's why prophecies are never impressive. You can only talk about them in retrospect, finding things that you can twist and contort to fit what the prophecy says, not to predict future events. So not impressed, sorry.
So, in effect, when God speaks a promise, that promise is a prophecy, and it is fulfilled.
Not in any demonstrable way. And that's why there are so many problems in these religious assertions, because they simply do not stand up to any critical scrutiny. They will always say that there's a fulfilled prophecy. Well, hey, great. How do you know, and what's your evidence? And the best that they can do is say, well, it seems to me, and I think it fits. Again, this is not impressive.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, those are the two different ways of looking at the God question.
And your side is about as ridiculous as it gets. It's all emotional and not at all rational. But what else is new?
Does he exist? Yes, absolutely. Or does God not exist? No, absolutely not. You're an idiot.
I love how this guy keeps calling himself an idiot.
It's up to you to choose what you choose to believe, and based off of that belief, how you choose to live your life.
That's actually false. It's not up to you to choose, because your choices don't change objective reality. Either a God actually exists, or a God does not. Your beliefs in the matter mean absolutely nothing. It doesn't matter what you want. It doesn't matter what you think. It matters what is true in the real world, and all the wishes and dreams in the world don't change that. The question is not what makes you feel good, it's what is really the case. And this guy doesn't seem to care.
That's always been the beauty of it.
And when you really think about it, that's pretty much the religious side in a nutshell. None of their arguments are at all impressive. They all rely on wishful thinking and ad hoc rationalization to suggest, not to prove, not to demonstrate, but to barely suggest that there might be something out there if you don't think about it too hard, if you're more emotionally committed to feeling good than to being factually correct. And then the religious take sides and demand that their God, and only their God, is the right one, when there's no evidence for any of it. And when you point out this absurdity, they get mad, because they're really not concerned if any of it is so long as it gives them emotional comfort. And that's a pretty piss-poor way of going through life, isn't it? Clinging to fantasies because you're so emotionally frail that you just can't survive without it. Maybe this guy was right with all of the "you're an idiot" stuff. Maybe he actually recognizes that, yes, his own beliefs are stupid, because believing something for which there is no good evidence is dumb. And it doesn't matter if you're talking about gods, or alien abductions, or Bigfoot. It's downright ridiculous to cling to a belief because you want it to be true, without caring if it actually is. And the religious don't care. They never have, and they probably never will. So, are they idiots? Yeah, they are. Just like flat earthers, who are operating for religious reasons. Just like anti-vaxxers, who are often operating for religious reasons. Just like faith healers, who are operating for religious reasons. I trust we're seeing a trend here. Because idiots cannot cope with the real world, and so long as that's the case, they deserve derision, not praise, not respect. They haven't earned any. Let's not pretend otherwise.